Yeah, I believe we're ready to go.
Oh, okay. Good morning, everyone, and on this rainy morning, which we're always glad to get some rain, I would like to call the meeting to order, and at this time, I would like to do something extra today in that this is Veterans Day, and when we pause to honor all of our veterans and military, so I would like to recognize all.
Wait just a moment. I don't have this recording.
You don't have it recording? Oh, okay, we'll start over and you get to hear it again.
Hey, Chad, can you help her with that recording? Thank you. Oh, you're good now? Okay.
Okay, we'll just start over. Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to see all of you here today and glad you got in without getting drenched in the rain. Today is a special day. We celebrate Veterans Day when we pause to honor and remember all of those who have served in our armed forces. So today I would like to ask if you're a veteran or a widow or a widower of a veteran or in any way associated with a veteran, would you please stand and let us acknowledge you, please? And thank you from the board and from me personally for all that you've done for our country. We really do appreciate it. Okay, our invocation, we do have a quorum.
Yes, we do. We have four.
Okay, we have a quorum. And so the first thing we're going to do is we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance, and I would like to ask Jungus to lead us in that. If you'll stand with me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Would you remain standing, and we're going to have the invocation this morning by Pastor Troy Godwin, pastor of Business Administration at Bear Creek Bible Church in Keller, and we welcome you this morning.
Thank you, Chairman Wall. Let's pray. Father, we thank you this morning for the rain and for the freedom that we enjoy. We do recognize that freedom comes at a cost, and we ask that you bless and watch over those who have served, those who are currently serving, as well as all the families of those that make such great sacrifice and support them in that service. We ask that you grant everyone here a special measure of your wisdom and grace, helping us to always remember the forgiveness that comes through Jesus Christ, and that we honor and glorify you through these proceedings and in all that we do. We ask this in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Next, we're going to recognize visitors in the hearing public comments. First, Mr. Tracy Stanley.
My name is Tracy Stanley. I am both a property tax agent and a real estate broker and a member of MLS. I wanted to talk to you about appointment of agent forms, which seems to be quite an issue with the ARV and has caused many problems with the appraisal district when it comes to conflicts. I'm not going to read from this. The first two paragraphs are the important ones. They kind of explain what is the difference between an electronic signature and what is a digital signature. The appraisal district must accept any electronic signature, and many have used electronic signature by just making a mark on some device, like a credit card device or your screen, and you use your finger or your mouse, and sometimes they have a device to make it. That's an electronic signature, and in the appointment of agent, if the seller makes a mark to signify his signature, TAD has to accept it because they are not the police department of signatures. Digital signatures have been around quite a while, and they're a little bit different. A digital signature is intended to solve the problem of tampering and impersonation in digital communications. Digital signatures can provide evidence of origin, identity, and status of electronic documents, transactions, or digital messages. Signers can also use them to acknowledge informal consent. The comptroller and the rules of Texas don't require the appraisal district to use digital signatures. I use digital signatures and have been a champion of them for many times. That means I can list property, I can sell property, I can send it to the title company, and it can be closed, and I'm still in my pajamas in front of my computer because digital signatures have special marks and keys to verify signatures. I'm going to end this by saying I would hope that the ARB would require, or not require, but encourage agents to use digital signatures. I've talked to several of them, and we're going to start using it to try to help things. I know that Harris County has sent a form to the comptroller that beneath the signature of the owner, there's two boxes. One of them says IP address, and the other one says confirmation, which is the number assigned to a digital signature. So, and the comptroller has said it's in compliance. I wish that we could start using that because that's almost a much higher form than a electronic signature. It's not as good as a digital signature, but it's the start that's getting us to a point where we can confirm signatures of both agents and owners of property. That's it.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Stanley. Next is Mr. Gary Lasada.
Good morning, board members. My name is Gary Lasada, and I reside at 802 Doe Creek Trail, South Lake, Texas. I have 4 things that I want to share with the board. First of all, it's a question and whether or not the board is aware of the fact that the TAD website is down and has been down for a couple of weeks. Rumors are circulating that it won't be back up until the first of the year. If this is all true, I would think that the board should be informed about such matters, because I think it's an important issue. I believe DCAD has had a similar problem as Dallas Central Appraisal District, and they've come out and stated that it is a big problem for them. So I just thought I'd bring that to your attention. Second, I'd like to say that on December 17, 2021, I was still on the board. I specifically asked Mr. Law whether or not staff members or employees of the district, if he knew if any of them were still working as a real estate agent in violation of personnel and policy procedures. He said no. I'd like to inform the board that personnel policy P2 on page 62, unauthorized employment / self-employment states that TAD employees shall not engage in any business, trade, occupation, or profession outside of their TAD employment, which constitutes a conflict of interest, including appraising, listing, or serving as a real estate agent or broker for the sale, trade, lease, or rental of property located in Tarrant County and not owned or occupied by the employee. I know of 2 people in particular. They have a website, and if I'm not here to try to do anything to implode the individual employees, but if the board or the staff needs to know who they are, I'll be happy to share it. All you have to do is go online under multiple listing. Mr. Law answering no to my question in December of last year effectively lied to the board. And I think this board needs to know about that. The third thing is there clearly is a culture issue at TAD. The board is responsible for setting the culture from top down. TAD board should set guidelines for the culture at TAD and are responsible for communicating that culture to the chief appraiser at TAD. If, for any reason, the chief appraiser doesn't implement that direction of culture, then the board needs to replace the chief appraiser. So I don't know where the board is on culture, but of the district, but I think it's important that the chief appraiser knows what's expected of and from him. The last thing, by way of background, I think you all know that I served on the TAD board in 2020 and 2021. Some of you may not know that I served on the TAD ARB for 6 years from 2010 through 2015. During my time on the ARB, I was chair of panels that heard thousands of protests by taxpayers. During recent months, I have heard comments and complaints about a tax agent, real estate agent, regarding falsification of appointment of agent forms. I'm not here to discuss the merits of that. What I'm here to do today is to inform the board that while I was serving on the ARB, I witnessed many complaints by agents and taxpayers specifically relating to falsification of agent signatures or misrepresentation. So obviously this has been a hot button for several months, yet this staff problem has been around since 2010, and I suspect prior to 2010. Members of the board have made comments about being more transparent to taxpayers. At the last board meeting, individual board members requested that this topic appear on today's agenda for further discussion. I reviewed today's agenda and could not find it on there. I hope this is not an attempt to squash individual board member requests. Furthermore, I would urge this board to not adopt a policy regarding an employee's ability to file formal complaints with licensee or regulatory agencies. That train has already left the station, already been done. Anything to implement such a policy at this time on surface would have all the trappings of a cover-up. Policy on this subject already addresses that in a policy manual. Refer you to page.
Mr. Lasada, your time's almost up. Are you just about?
I'm just going to finish it right now.
Okay, good.
I refer you to Personnel Policy and Procedures, page 62, section P4, and page 63, section Q, regarding misuse, abuse, or theft of property. It's already in the policy manual. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lasada. Mr. Dodson.
Good morning, Board. Thank you for allowing me to come to the Board this morning. I'm a councilman from the city of Colleyville. I'm interested in why two topics are here, about two topics that were discussed at the end of your last board meeting. There was a mention of the policy for appointment of agents. I couldn't tell exactly what part of the appointment agents was involved, but I don't see it on the agenda today. It isn't, at least I don't see it. I also hope the board will take action about a policy covering TAD employees filing complaints about the agents. I see that is on the agenda today. I'm also wondering why the board isn't interested in solving problems of just meeting to fulfill requirements of the meeting. I'm very disappointed that the board asked the chief appraiser to investigate himself or hire a friend to do it. Why didn't the board bring a disinterested party to determine why a TAD employee could file complaints and use TAD resources to do so? The result of the investigation was giving the chief appraiser and the head of the residential appraisal 2-week vacation. This is extremely disappointing. I'm also concerned about the lack of transparency about the software, and I've mentioned this over 3 or 4 years. Nothing has been done. It appears that the board doesn't care and isn't concerned that the property owners know what's happening here. it's a closed system, and it's very disappointing. If I were doing this on the city council, I would hope to be defeated, and unfortunately, this board is not elected by citizens, so we don't have any opportunity other than to go to taxing agencies. I think that whole system is broken, and I think you all should be elected, but I'm working with my representatives to try to do something about that. By the way, the recordings from the past 2 board meetings was not accessible on the TAD website this last week. I had to call the TAD webmaster to get them reloaded so I could hear the recordings. Why isn't a video meeting also on the website? Our city's been recording and broadcasting our meetings for more than 10 years. I just heard apparently it is now broadcasted, but it hasn't been, and why isn't it saved on the website? I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me, but I have to go someplace to find out what's going on. I believe our city isn't getting proper services from TAD, and I will continue to provide this information to our council. I've already contacted our state senator about the lack of proper overview that I've repeatedly observed on the board. This board is acting more as a rubber stamp for the actions of the chief appraiser than providing oversight and establishing a strategic direction for the organization. I hope the board is ready to take actions on this matter as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Daniel Bennett.
Good morning, Chair, Ms. Baldwin, Board. I want to thank you for acknowledging Veterans Day. It's been one core issue that's dear to my heart. My journey started with TAD when my good cause for my grandfather who died, serving in 2 theaters of war in World War II. It wasn't good cause to file it. And we didn't even have the pledge until Mr. Diaz and Mr. Losada became board members. And that was one of the issues I had attending these meetings. I would actually show up late. Well, I include you too. I'm sorry about that, but I do know it was simultaneous. I would attend these board meetings late because I couldn't sit there and not honor our fallen heroes at the end. All right, I want to talk this morning about Todd Clark. Todd Clark is Gallegos and Walsh & Gallegos to review and provide a summary review of complaints to TDLR regarding tax consultant. Mr. Clark's history with the district is long. He also does work for other districts, and I do know the policies that he has augmented for other districts. Mr. Clark is asked to modify the TAD employee handbook, and it was presented to the board in February of 2021. Prior to his presentation, 4 months earlier, Mr. Losada asked Mr. Law about the employee dating policy towards the end of one of the meetings. You can actually go listen. That's very clear audio, one of the very few clear audios. And Mr. Law replied that he was unsure, but he thought it was discouraged. Well, it's not discouraged. It's prohibited. That's what it says in the handbook. But 4 months later, Mr. Clark changed the handbook to say discouraged, which mirrored what Mr. Law told Mr. Losada, not but just 4 months earlier. Mr. Losada challenged Mr. Law on the language and how it was conveniently changed by Mr. Clark to match the response 4 months earlier. Now Mr. Clark was summoned by the chief appraiser without board approval to write a summary of clearance for all parties, paying Gallegos $25,000 to do so, to review the abuse of assets and power against Mr. Chandler Crouch. Mr. Armstrong accessed ARB records. Mr. Armstrong accessed a separate entity. He had to go into those records, and correct me if I'm wrong, to get the information that he used to file those complaints. There's no open records request of anybody accessing those records. Did Mr. Clark review the ARB in his billing? He said he did on one day, and one day only. I got the billing right here. So I believe that's a violation of his duty as a TAD employee. No record of his access exists, thus violating his code of conduct. Now let's go to live streaming. We got to stay off Facebook. They have metrics. They know who's online. We need to do it just like the county commissioners. Film it, click on it, watch it a dozen times. I don't Facebook because of the very reasons they collect data. So this is wrong.
That should not be left up to Mr. Law. This should have been done by the subcommittee, Ms. Wyman, that you chaired back in 2021 with the tax assessor collector, Mr. Dion. The charge of your committee was never fulfilled. You promised a second meeting, which never happened. This committee was never closed and disbanded. The chief appraiser has never offered or considered live streaming or proper recordings of the public meetings. It is inappropriate for him to speak on this item today and should be left to the board for consideration and implementation. Getting audio online was a formidable task back in 2020 when you guys came onto the board. All right, and I covered, I want to do one other thing. This is the appendix that Mr. Todd Clark used. He didn't interview the ARB chair or the records access. He didn't go to Chandler's website, and I don't see where he used the Brett Kennedy article where Mr. Armstrong said he was being attacked in his appendices. I want to talk about the 35 seconds I have left. The board needs to know that Todd Clark made 2 trips to TAD. Each trip cost about $1,000. Mr. Tepper came up here today at $190 an hour, and 1/3 of that's his travel cost. I have his billing right here. He returned travel to Austin following the meeting on the 13th of August, $904. On the 12th of August, traveling to Fort Worth for the Board of Directors meeting, $938. And his billing's inconsistent. He attended TAD another time, but it's not delineated in the prior bill for the prior month. It's not broken out.
Mr. Bennett?
So I think this needs to be reviewed by the board to make sure the billing's accurate. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your input. Mr. Lon Burnham?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ron Burnham. I've lived at 236 Avenue for more years than Sunday Jordan can count. And he saw me before City Council on more occasions than he wanted to see me, I'm sure. This is my first TAD meeting, and my rule of thumb in public sector meetings is don't show that you're a fool and get up there and speak the first time. I'm breaking that rule today. And then I'm going to start off with invoking my late mother's admonishments. When we were growing up, she, 20-year veteran of the 4th ISD, 4th and 5th grade teacher, 10-year veteran of being a den mother, she always emphasized the most important thing in life is to be polite and nice. It starts with please and it ends with thank you, and everything in between is supposed to be polite and nice. I have not always succeeded in fulfilling her admonishment, but I was so rudely greeted today when I came in this building for the first time. I'm led to speak today about what someone else alluded to, which is the culture here, the environment here in the workforce. Sometimes people forget that we don't have a choice when it comes to public sector entities. When I'm a customer by choice, I never return to that facility again, but I'm going to be back at this facility, and I expect to be treated with graciousness and politeness by a public sector employee. I don't expect to be told what to do and where to go when I'm in a public space, just maybe because of who I was associating with. I'm not guilty by association. I am guilty of being very concerned about what's going on at TAD, but I haven't been here to check it out myself before. I was only concerned based on what I've read in the various media outlets and what I've heard from people. But my first experience, other than being taxed for the last 81 years as a property owner, my very first experience was one of rudeness that was beyond the pale and totally unacceptable in the behavior. So I want to talk about, let's just start with where every kindergartner should have learned: be polite, be gracious, say please and say thank you, and understand that somebody that just looks like he's an old man that doesn't know what he's doing may have been doing this for about 50 years and knows exactly what he's doing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Burnham, and we apologize if you felt you were rudely met.
And I apologize if he was rudely treated.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, if he was,
It doesn't matter how he felt. What happened
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. It's not, I'm sorry if you misunderstood. That's not an apology.
Oh, well, okay. You got it.
Thank you.
Mr. Crouch?
Good morning,
Good morning.
members of the board, those in attendance, those watching online. I start my public comments that way because there's a guy that is not in attendance today who surely would be in attendance today if he was still alive, and that is Mr. Thomas Twillick. He passed away since the last meeting, and I just feel like, there is somebody that did not, I don't know another person that exercised his First Amendment right more than he did. And we didn't line up on every issue, but on that one, we lined up quite well. And he passed away just tragically, heart attack, whatever. And I just wanted to keep that spirit alive here, because what he did is part of what makes our country great. It's part of what makes these meetings great. And it's part of what makes the service of our veterans worth it, in my view. And I think that that's for those kind of ideals that are God-given to us, that makes each of us important and valuable, is a lot of the reason why people go serve in the military. And it's just, I'm thankful to get to speak with you guys on this day, to be able to acknowledge those things. And, you know, my intention behind doing what I'm doing is to help people. That's the reason why I started. Back in 2017, I did not start by addressing the board. I hadn't gone to a board meeting. I started by talking to people in my community and saying, hey, what do you need help with? I want to help with whatever that is. And they brought property taxes to me. That's how I got started in this. I knew a little bit about property taxes. I had the same experience a lot of people had. I went to the board, or to ARB protest, basically got laughed out of the room. I was a real estate broker, but I knew I had the data that justified a reduction, and I didn't get the reduction, and it was maddening. It was, ironically, on about a $40,000 house. And the reason why I didn't get the reduction is because the data wasn't there. In that community, there were a lot of renters, and then there were a lot of people that had torn down houses and built brand new. So the data just wasn't there, but the value was accurate. What I was presenting was accurate. It deserved to be lower. And so that stuck with me. And then in 2017, when I was asking for help, they brought that issue to me, and I took that experience and I said, you know what? I know what these people are going through, and I'm going to take this and help people. And that's my goal in this. My goal is not to fight. And I just want to thank each and every one of you, board members, voting board members, I should say. Since the last board meeting, I've reached out to each one of you, and each one of you agreed to talk with me and agreed to have a conversation about solving problems and making the system better. And each one of you were gracious to hear what I had to say, so that I wasn't confined to 3 or 5 minutes. It's fairly impossible to communicate in an environment like that. But my intention is to help people, and that's it. I don't want to fight. I have no desire to fight. But if it's in the course of helping somebody, if somebody's getting in my way of fulfilling this mission, then you have to realize this is my mission field. There's something so much more important to me than money at stake. So what that means is there's no amount of money I'm not willing to spend, and there's no amount of effort I'm not willing to put into this. And I'm not going to back down from a fight. I'm not looking for a fight, but if you step in the way of the mission field that I am here to serve and the people that I'm here to serve, I will stop at nothing to make sure that I am fulfilling this mission. Because for me, the mission is something far greater than just one protest or just one thing. We have a broken property tax system that needs attention. Several of us have talked about the issue that most people don't really understand the actual problems that are going on in the system. They don't. They know that there's something wrong fundamentally, but they don't understand the real issues. It takes us that are invested into this, that know what's going on, to have these dialogues and to improve. I love that we're live streaming. I love, Mr. Law reached out to me. We have this AOA issue. They're taking proactive measures. I think Mr. Bennett's comments about it being on Facebook are great, and I love the discourse. And most of all, I just want to end with this again. Mr. Thomas Torlin-Kelsey and all of the people that stand to exercise their speech and to speak those grievances, even if it's misplaced, even if they don't understand, it's valuable. It's valuable because that's what makes our country great. That's what makes your responsibility great. We all can work together, and out on the other end of this with proper discourse, we all serve to gain by this whole process. Appreciate your time, and I look forward to helping more people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crouch. Next, we have Leota Ritchie. Good morning.
I recently sold my house at 500 South Redford Lane in Whitestone. The house belonged originally to my paternal aunt and uncle. They purchased the house in June 1951 for $8,000. My aunt passed away in that house in June 1980, the hottest summer of the century. Her husband passed away in February 2000, not in the house, and my cousin inherited the house after her father's passing. My cousin's paternal uncle took care of my cousin's finances, including the house. He asked me to be the property manager for the house and take care of it for my cousin when she went to a local nursing home. My cousin passed away in December 2010. After my cousin's death, her uncle and I had a conversation regarding the house. He stated he wanted to give me the house because I had been taking care of my cousin and the house. This happened in 2011. My cousin's uncle passed away in April 2012. So I've been taking care of paying the property taxes since 2012. Beginning in 2019, when Wendy Burgess became the Tarrant County Tax Assessor Collector, my property taxes have skyrocketed. Mrs. Burgess, I would appreciate looking at you in the eye. I have had to pay the taxes as follows. 2019, $1,136.05. 2020, $1,127.79. 2021, it more than doubled to $2,478.76. 2022, a little break, $2,437.30. I have had to take money out of our retirement annuity to pay our taxes for the past 4 years. I finally decided I could no longer afford to take money out of our retirement annuity. I closed within 3 weeks and was able to recoup the money that I had taken out of that annuity and start a new annuity. The Tarrant Appraisal District is definitely corrupt and heartless. People like me are hurting because of the high property taxes. And don't tell me you have to pay those property taxes too, because you make more money than the rest of the world does. You have the money to pay those taxes. You don't have to take it out of your annuity, do you? I had to sell my family home. That was purchased before I was even born. I have something that I read this morning that I want to share with you from a very wise man. Listen to me, everyone, and understand this. Nothing outside a person can defile them by going into them. Rather, it comes out of a person that defiles them. Your actions defile you. Your words, your attitude defile you. Those words are from Jesus. I would strongly suggest you check things out in the Bible and see what you're doing. I have one last gift for Miss Burgess. And I have plenty of time to do this.
Thank you.
Eat it.
Excuse me, we don't throw things.
Eat it.
We don't do that.
I do. It's my time, not yours.
We're not doing it.
I'm not done.
Well, you have 50 seconds.
I know how much time I have. It's right there in front of me. You tried to take the time away from me before, and you're not gonna do it again. I'm telling you right now, I may have sold my home to recoup money for our retirement. But I will tell you right now, I will do everything in my power to back Chandler Crouch and anybody else in this room that's against you and get you off this board. You are corrupt, every single one of you. Ms. Burgess, I'll ask you again to look me in the eye. You are all corrupt. You especially, Mr. Law. You were not punished enough for what you did to Chandler, and neither was Mr. Armstrong. Can't look me in the eye, can you, Mr. Jordan?
I believe that's all the public speakers we have. We'll move on. We get to the agenda. You get that. The next item, action items, is the consent agenda. I believe everyone has probably read them. Is there any agenda item you would like to remove?
Just to be clear, are all 1 through 10 part of the consent agenda? Usually
1 through 6.
1 through 6, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little confusing the way that's set up.
Oh.
But okay.
Well,
I see, because they're paragraph, okay.
Got it?
Okay, I got you.
Okay.
Just the way that it lined up, it looked like it was 1 through 6, and 7 was confusing.
Oh,
Okay.
Okay.
No, that's fine.
All right, anyone want to remove anything from the consent agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. It passes unanimously. We are now down to the discussion item 7, to discussion concerning a possible policy regarding ability to, they printed over, to file formal complaints as a TAD employee with licensing or regulatory agencies. And I'll open the discussion.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think Mr. Lasada was addressing some of this, and I do consider him pretty much a subject matter expert on this, if that's appropriate terminology. And I would ask him if he was speaking for this item.
Yes, sir.
Okay, if you were, then I would like to hear from you in more detail what your experience was. You said the AOA, if you could approach the mic. The AOA problem has existed for a long time, and I'm aware that it has, and I'm aware of some things that have happened just in the last few years.
This really doesn't have
Well,
I'll go back to 2010 when I
the
first
policies. You're right.
served on the ARB. And at that time, our first meeting, there was a question about the appointment of agents. Being my first meeting, I had no idea what that was all about. As time grew, and I ended up becoming chair of those panels, it became a recurring kind of problem. And basically, there were intentional, as best as I could tell, forgeries, intentional, false representations, and a lot of unintentional. And that came to us in many occasions. I'd have to work with the ARB staff, and back then, I think Sherry Brown was the representative from TAD who was in charge of working these things with the ARB. It was an ongoing problem then. It was an ongoing problem my entire tenure on the ARB. I think it could be handled if the staff, or a staff policy, and maybe even a software, were written and put in place to guarantee that the agents were, in fact, the agents of representation. Again, I'm not putting my hat in the ring to fight whatever's going on outside right now. I'm just trying to tell you this is an age-old problem. The representation has been a problem, and it's come to our panels, I can say, in hundreds of cases, maybe even more. I didn't take notes at the time. I never knew this was gonna be a problem, 15 years later or 10 years later, but obviously it still is. So yes, I've seen a lot of it.
Thank you. Mr. Lasada, I've been advised that I'm misunderstanding that agenda item. So we're not talking about AOAs here. That's my fault, and I want to apologize. And I don't think it's appropriate for discussion. It should be on the agenda. I asked for it to be on the agenda, but it's not on the agenda.
Okay, so what, did I respond to your question, though?
Yeah,
You did, but it was not, that was not what was on, our discussion is about
to this discussion.
the employees being able to file complaints.
I signed up for that to speak also.
I think you did.
Yeah.
Didn't
No,
you?
I didn't.
You didn't?
You didn't sign a speaker card, or did it get called on?
No, I put it on there as number 7.
You put discussion number 7, but you didn't talk about it. Okay, but if you want to.
Hang on a second. We're having a discussion. He's speaking to an agenda item, and the board can, because he's speaking to an agenda, we can engage. And so he doesn't have a limit of 5 minutes as far as that's concerned, if board members have questions for him.
Okay, the point is, if he has the right to discuss an agenda item at the time of the agenda item, which he is doing, and that's right. I kept thinking, wait a minute, that's not on the agenda, but this is, and if you would like to speak on this item?
Fair enough. Okay.
That's just the way it works, that's the way it normally works.
I don't think, it's good information with the other.
I appreciate you cutting through it. I would love to speak on that. There are current policies in place in the personnel manual that addresses that specifically about employees, and I think I quoted the numbers. I can quote them again if you'd like, and the pages. I'm thinking maybe, Mr. Tevert, did you take those? No.
The part that you cited when you talked earlier was page 62, policy P4, and page 63, policy Q.
You did take them. Thank you.
Check him out.
Yeah, check them out.
Here we go.
No, I'm impressed. Thank you.
I asked
Because
Jeff Craig to pull those for us.
But the point is that there are
He's gonna try to put
already
those for us, so
policies
we
that
have
are
them.
addressing that issue. The question is does this board want to change those policies after a situation has already occurred? That's when I made a comment about the fact that the train has already left the station. If the board wants to change those policies after all of this brouhaha that's gone on with Commissioner Armstrong, and I've never spoken pro or con about that because I didn't think it was my position to do that. But I think the train has left the station in that it has happened. And there was a violation of policy, which is in place. So whatever action was or wasn't taken, again, is not what I'm here to talk about. But I will tell you this, your policy is in place, can't pick and choose which policies you're going to administer and which ones you're not going to administer. So if the board changes that policy to fit what had happened in November of last year, that looks like a cover-up on the outside to me. And I don't think that this board is trying to give the impression of a cover-up. So I'm speaking against that discussion of changing the policy to fit that narrative because these are already in place. That's where I'm at on this.
Okay. I don't think that we ever have intended to cover up anything that happened in the past year, this issue. I think that the board is looking at it. We did look at it. We've discussed it quite a bit in public. And so I just don't want anyone to think that we're trying to cover anything up. We're trying to be very transparent. And I hope that that's what is seen from now on.
That's not what I said, but that's okay.
Okay, well, we're not communicating because we got mixed up, but I heard the word cover up, and that.
There was an elaboration leading up to it. I just didn't accuse the board of being a cover-up.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thanks for saying that. Okay, you did not say that. Thank you. Okay, do we have comments? Can we get, I think you asked for a copy.
I did, so that we could compare what the policy currently is with versus what has been proposed here. I guess my feeling was that when we discussed this issue, we felt like it wasn't really clear whether a policy had been broken at that time or not. and so that was the reason to request to have something that we made sure could cover that type of situation. It's not gonna fix what already happened.
Press the button.
Are you on?
I think,
There's a button on the bottom. No, I think,
His mic shows red.
I'm on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it's gonna fix what happened, but hopefully it'll give us a better tool
Yeah.
to discipline someone that chooses to do something like that in the future. So, I mean, I don't understand why that would be in any way, shape, or form viewed as a cover-up. We've already addressed the issue as best as we could. We may or may not agree with our decisions, but going forward, we want to make sure that we have a very clear policy that states that if it is an ethical requirement based on your licensing, you can do that, but if it's something that you're just doing on your own person, it just needs to be done without any Tarrant County property titles or anything like that. I think that's what I'm looking for, just to be that it's perfectly clear. And did you find that policy?
Yeah.
Okay, so we had page 62, right? 62. Yeah, if it's already here, there's no point in being redundant, but we felt like when we went through this that there wasn't really a very clear policy on it. That's why we requested one.
Well, there was a policy. Okay, someone else was wanting to talk. Did you want to say something, Mr. Kraus?
Yes,
Yeah.
Let me just read this real quick.
Okay.
TAD employees shall not engage in any business, trade, occupation, or profession outside of their TAD employment, which...
That was his first issue.
Oh, that was the for employment. And then the other one was Q.
Page 64 starts on funds.
Uh-huh.
Page 62.
Yeah, misuse, abuse, or theft of TAD property. Each TAD employee shall be responsible for the care, maintenance, proper use. Yes, take care of your stuff. Okay, TAD employees shall only use equipment, tools, and other TAD property that they are authorized to use. Personal use of TAD equipment, supplies, tools, and other TAD property is not permitted, which is pretty straightforward. So I don't know. I mean, does this cover the issue that we had? Does it not cover? Do we need an additional clarification on the policy?
I think your original question was, we need to discuss this because, yes, that's true, and that employee could come in and they could use TAD property to perform things that would benefit them personally and so on and so forth, but it doesn't really address a TAD employee filing a complaint against another registrant with a professional organization. And I think that was the point that was at issue. And no, we don't really have a policy that says that. And this policy that's been proposed by Mr. Clark specifically addresses that if a TAD employee feels like there needs to be a complaint filed against a registrant, this policy would kind of address and cover how we would do that. We do have other employees in the in TAD who actually have the Registered Professional Appraiser designation, but they also have the Texas Appraiser Licensing and Certification Board. And we've been told by them that they actually do have a rule in their ethical standards that says if they come across an appraiser that's acting outside of their ethical rules, that they have they're compelled to turn them in. And so they have come to Jeff and I and said, well, what do we do in those situations? Because we don't have a policy that specifically addresses that. And of course, this policy actually deals with the Texas, actually it deals with the Texas Real Estate Commission, it deals with the Texas Department of License and Regulations, and it deals with the Texas Appraiser Licensing and Certification Board. It covers more than just TDLR, which was the complaint that was filed originally against a registrant. So I understand what you've just read from the standpoint of meaning that employees should not use TAD resources for their own personal gain, things of that nature. But this one actually says, does a TAD employee have the right to file a complaint against another registrant in some of these different regulatory agencies?
And you would
I
just
think it
add
goes a
this
little
policy under this section here?
No, I don't think that policy on page 64.
No, I mean, you would add the proposed
yes.
policy just under this section.
And I also want to point out, too, that the board is not taking any action today at all. This is just a discussion item to talk about it, see if you like this, see if you want revision, questions, and we planned on bringing this back at either the December meeting or the January meeting for official action if that's what the board chooses. So no action will be taken today on this at all. It's just a discussion issue.
I think this shows how two people can read the same thing and come away with very, very different interpretations. As I read this, the TAD employees shall only use equipment, tools, and other TAD property as they are authorized to use. There was an authorization, clearly was an authorization to use everything at TAD and even the ARB to do this. That was clearly not authorized. So it's a different interpretation I walk away with, and I'm going to finish reading it. It says, personal use of TAD equipment, supplies. This is after the authorized use. The next sentence says, personal use of TAD supplies, tools, and any other TAD property is not permitted and may result in discipline up to and including termination. Improper use may subject you to criminal prosecution. That's pretty serious for an unauthorized use. So we're dancing on whether it's talking about their authorization to use the equipment opens it up to be anything that they do with it, or the specific thing that was not authorized to be done. And in my mind, if you read it that way, I think that's pretty simple. So I think it is, it probably is a good policy here, and I would be looking at, Mr. Todd wrote up this, I'll tell you, I don't have any confidence in him at this point. So I'm going to be reading this with more scrutiny, and we do need to delay it, and I would suggest the January meeting.
Yeah, that's our
Well,
next one.
I want to make sure that you didn't misunderstand my comments. This policy that's up for discussion today is not intended to replace anything that's currently in our policies. It would be in addition to our current policy. So we're not saying that we would strike that and put this in its place.
Sure. Right. But the thing is, I'm wondering how we got here with that in place.
How we what? I'm sorry.
How did we go through what we've gone through since May
Yeah.
with this in place?
May I add a different perspective? I think it would add to the conversation just a little bit.
Okay.
And thank you for allowing me to do this. So back in 2019, December 6, 2019, I received an email from Randy Armstrong where he talks about a lot of the items that ended up in the complaint that he ended up filing against my license personally. And he mentions things about property value studies, things about how I've listed property and that sort of thing. And then he signs off on the email saying something to the effect of, we all reap what we sow. And it sounds a little bit like a personal attack against me. And so I understand. So I take a little bit of an exception with the summary report that was done by Mr. Clark. I wonder if there's additional information that I haven't seen yet, and maybe there is. I'll leave my mind open to that. Here's what I'm getting.
Yeah, let's get to this issue.
So here's the
we don't need the background.
If this is an issue where there's a potential known violation of years of somebody doing as many protests as I've done, I feel like it's incumbent on an employee of this government organization to make that known, to try and solve the problem. And so if rather than reporting to another government agency, reporting internally to this government agency in an attempt to try and solve the problem. And so that, to me, that if our goal is to have a quality control on violations happening here, then that needs to go through the chain of command, unless it's a personal attack, a personal issue.
Okay, we're not. It's not personal.
No. See, this is what I'm saying. If it was a personal thing, then I understand each person has their own rights to go report, to sue somebody, report something, however they see. But if it has to do within context of the professional, what he cites is the method of protesting, the effect that my protests were having on the system in general. In that context, that is a professional context. So I would submit in that situation, that would have to be if he was going to file a complaint to another government organization, it would have to be on behalf of this government organization because it's in the professional capacity.
Well, we're working on that, and I thank you for your comments. I see where you're coming from, but I think we're going to get back to changing or adding to our policy is what we're really thinking. So I'm going to thank you now for your comments.
What I'm saying is,
yeah, I got you. Thank you.
The duty would be to report those before.
Madam Chair, I'd like to let him finish his sentence without being interrupted.
Well, I think it's getting into something that's really different from what we're talking about here. That's the reason I said let's get back to that.
Motivation behind what we've just been through, which is the whole reason we're looking at this. And I'm just saying, he sounds like he's got about a sentence left. If we could not talk over him, I want to hear it.
Well, all right, then. All right, go finish, would you please? Finish your sentence.
That was, I sincerely appreciate it. It's just, with this, the situation that has resulted in this being a discussion item is the presumption that Mr. Clark's summary report was accurate and that it was a complaint filed in the professional capacity. I take exception to that because nobody else outside of this individual knew that the issue even existed, and it was one complaint filed from one individual to another. So that's an issue entirely different than what we're talking about today. I would say for what we're talking about today, if it is a known issue in professional capacity, it has to be a duty to rise to the ranks to receive Mr. Law's attention before that. And so I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No one likes a personal threat, especially when you bring one with you and throw it in people's face.
Okay, let's get back. I think we're getting out. Thank you, Mr. Kraut. You want to?
Ms. Well, no, I'm fine. I just wanted him to be able to finish.
He did.
Compete for airtime.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so just kind of reading through this and what this is saying, if somebody wants to make a complaint, they need to seek input from the chief appraiser first.
More specifically, if they want to file a complaint in their official capacity as an employee, they need to seek not only their director, but they also need to bring that to me. And it also goes on to say that if somebody wants to file a complaint against me, they need to talk to you guys.
Now, would it be better if we just said that the only person that can file a complaint can be the chief appraiser rather than, because this almost sounds like, okay, they can bring it to you, but they can still file it on their own. And it seems to me if you're the chief appraiser, perhaps if there's going to be a complaint from the district, it should only come from you. Now, if they're doing it as an individual, you address that down here, where in their personal capacity, from home, not using any of the titles or anything having to do with Tarrant Appraisal District. If they want to do something, certainly we can't infringe on those rights that they have. But if it's as an employee of the district, it just seems to me like really anything like that should only come from the chief appraiser, not from anyone other than that. And that's just my opinion as looking through that.
I agree with you. And the other thing, though, that I didn't hear you say was if they choose on their own as a private citizen, they will not use any of the materials or anything from the district and that's in here.
That's in there.
But we want to reiterate that because that was one of the things that I think we challenged was the fact that there was material from the
I think Jungus wanted to say something.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jungus. I've been looking down here because they've been talking. Go ahead.
What we're talking about in its simplest form, and Mr. Temper might want to jump in, is line of duty. Do you have the authority to make this decision? And that can be handled either in policy or a job description if it is. Mm-hmm. But I don't disagree that what's being said is that it should, at a minimum, go through the chief appraiser for approval. And that's a policy statement that we're talking about. But it's a line of duty discussion, and line of duty gets held up, whether it be a health issue or line of duty is the determination we're talking about. Mr. Temper?
So I'll address a couple of comments. So I do think there is a difference between what is listed under Q in the personnel policy and the policy that Mr. Clark had drafted, because the policy in Q, what it talks about is a use of TAD equipment, supplies, tools, and any other TAD property. And what the policy that Mr. Clark has drafted, it ends up dealing with information that is obtained in the course of somebody's duty with the Tarrant Appraisal District. And so I think you can very easily have a scenario where somebody filed a complaint with a regulatory agency where they both violated Q and violated this policy that Mr. Clark has drafted up, but I think it is a little bit broader. I do certainly agree with Ms. Jordan's comments about sort of the line of command, and I certainly, if somebody is going to be filing a complaint that looks like it came from the Tarrant Appraisal District, management and the overseers of the Tarrant Appraisal District need to be the ones making that decision, which would be Mr. Law, his senior staff, along with the members of this board. I think that is the idea of what the policy was drafted to try to make. The other issue, though, that we run into, and it's really twofold, and this is what Mr. Popple was talking about, is I think if there's going to be an official complaint that is filed by the Tarrant Appraisal District itself, it certainly would make sense that the chief executive officer and the chief appraiser would be the person who would go ahead and file that. But under some licenses, including the Texas Appraisal Licensing and Certification Board, individual licensees actually have a duty to report misconduct. So we can't, I don't think, require people that have those licenses to not have some avenue under which they can uphold what they need for their licenses. And then obviously, part of the First Amendment, you have the right to petition the government for grievances. That includes you have a personal First Amendment right with some restrictions to do it. So I would agree, if it's going to be something that comes from TAD, absolutely, the highest levels of TAD should be making that decision. I also think it makes sense to have a policy that says if you're going to file based upon information you receive because you're at TAD, we're going to have some oversight before that ends up being done.
That's what I was going to ask.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we were all thinking the same thing. If you may have the right, but if you've received information from this organization, from TAD, it needs to come through TAD.
Yep.
Everybody agree on that?
I don't know that that's clearly stated here.
Yeah,
I don't
maybe
know
you
that
could
that part,
work on.
if under your license you are required to report, but you only have that information as within your official capacity as a TAD employee, then I think that's not covered here.
No.
You still, because you have received that information in your official capacity as a TAD employee, you have to involve your supervisor, namely the chief appraiser, before you go off and file the complaint. I think if they come across that information completely outside, independently from here, well, that's different. But if they found that out because they work here, they have to go through the chief appraiser.
I don't think it's a bad idea, like you're saying, Tony, that if an employee learns of something,
That's right.
brings it to a supervisor, the supervisor brings it to me, and as Matthew has said, if it's going to be a complaint that looks like a TAD complaint, it really should be filed by the Office of the Chief Appraiser rather than an individual.
Mm-hmm.
But in turn, it also says that if he or she learned the information here that they're going to use to do it outside the TAD, it still needs to come through you because they're using our information.
Yeah, and not to get into a discussion of personal feelings or anything like that, but most of the issues would be a result of an ARB hearing, something that's said in an ARB hearing to an appraiser. That appraiser comes and takes it to a supervisor. A supervisor takes it to a director, and that's how potential improprieties or injustices would be learned would be kind of at that, standing at the front counter, working in ARB, so information is learned, like that. But I agree, it needs to be brought up, and if it reaches to the level that a complaint should be filed, I think it probably should be filed by the chief appraiser, probably in consultation even with the district's attorney, to see if there is sufficient evidence to support it and things of that nature.
Okay.
And if that rises to a level, it could even possibly be brought to the board. The only thing I would be careful about is, the board has certain authorities in the law. This is really not addressed in the law as far as what the, how the board gets involved in something like that.
Well, I think we're setting the policy is where our involvement. And then once the policy is set, you're carrying out the policy. I mean, that's your.
Just a second, Ms. Burgess had asked to speak.
Just since her back is usually to me, and facing down that way. Speaking to our board-appointed attorney, the individual holding a personal designation that they themselves hold, not the entity itself as TAD. The individual holds that designation. I understand that. And then being compelled through their ethical requirements, they're compelled as an individual holder of their professional designation to report to the state agency, and I do not believe that this board can quash their responsibility that they took an oath to that state agency in receiving that designation and signing that oath to receive that designation and uphold their responsibilities in that designation, and being held accountable to TDLR or whatever state agency that is. So incorporating appropriately in the verbiage for that.
And I think the way that Mr. Clark wrote this policy is it doesn't say that a TAD employee would be prohibited from filing such a complaint. The language that's used here is they must seek input from the chief appraiser before filing such a complaint. And so I think that is the exact reason why that language was modified there, was probably to try to avoid crossing that line. But again, it at least gives the upper management of the district, and then if Mr. Law gets something that he thinks needs to be brought to this board's attention, and it gives us the opportunity to oversee it and at least know what's going on.
Right. Good. Because and I'll just say to the board also, just along this vein, this doesn't just say that a holder of a professional designation can only make a claim against someone that is outside of this building. It's also if there's something that they think is going on by an individual that is inside this building as well. So it's not, and I'm using my experience in my office as well, so it's similar to whistleblower, so I want to make sure that we're not quashing the abilities of the individual to hold others accountable if they see something that meets the threshold of that as well.
And I don't think this does, because it says, other regulatory agency or any license holder. So I think that would include an outside person on the outside or a person on the inside.
Right.
I think the policy is getting close. I don't think it's finalized yet, but I think it's going in the right direction. And so yes. I think you've heard some of our discussion and maybe tweak it and just fine tune it a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good policy to add to our policy handbook, just to be very clear as it relates to these types of situations. Again, I don't know how you think that's a cover-up from what happened before, but I think it's just to be clear that if this happens again, we have the policies in place to address it very clearly, is what my hope is. Hopefully it won't happen again, but if it does, whoever does it is going to be clear what policy they broke and why they broke it and what their rights and abilities are.
Okay, and Mr. Tepper, are you going to rewrite this for us?
No, this is Mr. Clark who's.
Clark,
who's
okay,
just- we
Mr.
will-
Clark. Well, and
Certainly, what I can do is I can visit with Mr. Clark.
Clark,
and
okay.
express to him. I took notes and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, since he's not here,
Yeah,
I
and
think
if
that's
we could
probably
get
the best.
that ahead of time would be good, so we can be maybe adding to or taking away or whatever. At least peruse whatever he's written. Okay, and Mr. Johnson.
Well, I was just gonna say, the distinction is, because we've got to take into consideration, as has been said by Ms. Burgess, the whistleblower laws are federal law. And certainly, the First Amendment rights are constitutional rights. But the determination is what is an official TAD complaint and what is an individual whistleblower complaint. There's a distinction.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I think we all agree, right?
No problem.
All right. Is there
I'll
any-
just be clear. You're looking at me because you expect me to object, and I'm not going to. I don't mind adding a policy doing this.
Okay.
But I think it was already clearly in our policy. Mr. Armstrong was not authorized to do what he did, and he, of course, used everything it had to do what he did. And I'm disappointed by that. But want to add another policy, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
We can ignore that one later, too.
Oh. Really? That's not where we're heading. We're not intending to do that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but I feel like reading what Mr. Losada brought up and I uncovered in research. I feel like it was already there. I think we're just skirting around it. But if we want to add the policy, I think it's a good start. So I'm supportive of it.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. Okay.
May I approach, not to continue this debate, just a point of clarification.
You certainly may.
Thank you, I appreciate you extending that to me.
It's grace.
I'm not trying to prolong this discussion, I just have a question, not sitting at the dais anymore. I don't know where to get information, and so my question is that this policy that Mr. Clark drafted has been submitted to the board. Was it in a packet for review for individuals that are not on the board? That's my question. I may have formed my questions and my comments differently had I been able to see this in advance. And if it was, then it's my ignorance, and I'll accept that.
Don't we post?
We are in the
post
process,
information?
we're actually in the process of, when we go forward with board meetings, we're going to post the entire package on the website so that.
So this one was?
This one was not, no. It was
Okay.
our agenda, and this time was posted like all of our agendas have been in the past, but we're changing that up
Getting
to
better
where.
and better all the time.
Yep.
See?
And my thought would be that if we have Mr. Clark amend this policy based upon the discussion that we've had here today, that it could get put on the agenda for the December meeting as an action item.
Well,
that would be posted.
he suggested that we put it on January, so
Okay, we're
I'll defer to whomever
But
for
my
that.
thought would be that if the policy comes back rewritten in a way that the board likes it, at that meeting, the board could approve it and have it listed as an action item. And then if the policy comes back at the next meeting.
We could
in
table it.
January, if it's still not where you all think it should be, then you don't have to take action on it, and we can go back and make further revisions until we get something that satisfies the board.
Is that okay?
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
I'll let you know if I want to say something. You don't have to look.
You usually do.
Yeah.
But I'm still looking. Okay. I think we're clear on that.
Appreciate your attention, Catherine, very much. Thank you.
I know it. We're friends. Yes, I think that's a good idea. Go ahead and put it on the agenda, and then if it's not, and we will get it ahead of time, and we can go over it, and if we still have questions or changes or we don't like it, we'll just table it to January. Okay. Good. I've lost my agenda now. I think the next one is your report.
Taxpayer liaison
Yeah.
officer. is the next.
Oh, okay. I turned over here. Okay, you help me, guys.
Almost there, man.
Here we go.
Second page.
Okie dokie. Here we are. Now, here we go. Okay, next is, our taxpayer liaison officer. Yes, ma'am.
From July through October, I had a total of 17 inquiries. And we had 11 total appointments for the year. On the ARB, we had 11 appointments and 24 resignations. One of those resignations was a dismissal. In August, Mr. Gerald Miller filed a complaint regarding 3 issues: exemption, value, and conduct of TAD employees. I worked with Ms. Perlich to get information on Mr. Miller's exemption issues. However, we subsequently found that he had a lawsuit against TAD regarding exemption issues, so we gave no further information was provided to Mr. Miller. His tax agent, Chandler Crouch, presented his account to the Appraisal Review Board on June 24, 2022, in a joint motion with other accounts, and as his agent, he signed acceptance of the $86,675 for the 2022 market value. There was no appeal to the protest. Mr. Miller also made accusations of TAD staff lying, violating rules, intentionally misrepresenting material facts, all to justify our higher valuation. In my investigation of his complaints, I found no situations or issues where TAD employees did any of these things. In August, Mr. Chandler Crouch filed a complaint about why Randy Armstrong was questioning value outcomes of several protest hearings. I sent a form to Mr. Crouch. The form was entitled Request to Tarrant Appraisal Review Board for Panel Recommendation Review. A property owner or TAD can use this form to have a panel decision reviewed by the ARB chair. The panel decisions are not finalized until they've been ratified by the majority of the ARB forum. On October 3rd, Judge George Gallagher signed an order appointing Nancy Sharp as chairman and Stephen J. Moore as secretary of the Appraisal Review Board for the term beginning January 1, 2023. In October, Mr. David Black filed a complaint that his property in Crowley is in both Tarrant and Johnson County, and that per acre price is much higher in Johnson County valuation than it is in Tarrant County. I spoke with Mr. Randy Armstrong, and we decided that it would be best to refer him to the TAD website where he could see the 2021-22 reappraisal plan. So I talked to him and I emailed him copies of the plan. And that's what I've been doing for the last few months. Any questions?
You've been busy. No,
Thank you.
Anyone have any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we're down to the Chief Appraiser's report.
Thank you, Ms. Wellman. I'll try to be quick. I want to start off by talking about our current appraisal activity. Our appraisers are currently out in the field working building permits and are in the discovery phase of the appraisal cycle. According to our biannual reappraisal plan that was just mentioned, and it was just adopted in September by the board, we are on an annual reappraisal cycle, meaning that we reappraise properties every year. 2023 will be a property value study for the Tarrant Appraisal District. As a result, a sampling of TAD's market values will be studied by the state comptroller on a school district by school district basis. The purpose of this study, which is conducted by the comptroller's office, is to ensure equitable distribution of state funding for public education. Essentially what they will do is they'll look at our appraised value and compare that to a market value, which is typically sales price. And they do a ratio study through that, and basically we're tested. Residential permits, to give you an idea, in 2021 there were 26,959 building permits issued throughout the county. That resulted in 9,661 new homes that were added to the 2022 appraisal roll. For 2022, so far, there's only been 20,000 165. Now, obviously, we're not finished with 22 yet. There could be still some more building permits that come in. It's resulted so far in 5,636 new homes. So overall, from 2022 to 2023, it looks like the new home construction and the number of permits will be down from the 2022 levels. As far as commercial goes, in 2022, there were 7,500 building permits received. 620 resulted in new construction of commercial properties. In 2023, however, we're down on the number of permits, 6,699, or say 6,700 permits, but so far that's resulted in 777 new commercial construction. So while permits are down, it looks like the new construction for commercial is going to exceed the 2022 levels. Business personal property, in 2022, we added 130 new businesses in Tarrant County. 2023, we've already added 290 new businesses, and we won't know the final number until obviously spring. Business personal property has a rendition process that's mandatory by law. We probably will discover some new additional businesses from that process. I would like to talk a little bit about the live streaming today. Today we are live streaming this meeting, and we are using Facebook to do that. We plan to continue streaming our meetings going forward. We are meeting with the county on Monday to review how they do live streaming of their commissioners court. We've also been talking with a technology company to help us with some bids and some consultation on possibly how to do live streaming in this room. They've been in here a couple different times to look at the room and determine the angles and things of that nature. But we are in the process and have been working towards permanently live streaming these board meetings going forward. We haven't fully decided on the platform yet. We knew we had the ability to do it Facebook Live today, so we took advantage of that. Our plan is that this meeting and the December meeting will most likely be the same format with the webcam that we have using Facebook. But once we have the opportunity to get more information about technology, we'll be bringing it back to the board. It's not a budgeted item, so I'll have to have the board's approval on the expenditure of whatever we decide to do, and at what level and at what cost we want to do it. We could probably do it relatively cheap, or we could probably do it very expensive, just depending on what the board's pleasure is there. So we will be bringing that back to you in a subsequent meeting. I also want to talk about current and future real estate trends. I want to make sure I say her name. Ms. Ritchie brought a compelling story today about the house that she was speaking of, and it's no surprise that real estate values have been kind of going up considerably the last couple of years. I want to give you some numbers. I want to start off by saying Section 2301 of the Property Tax Code states, and I quote, "All taxable property is appraised at its market value as of January the 1st. And the appraisal district's attempt every time we appraise property is to appraise at market value. Do we always get it right? No. Do we get it right a lot of the times? Yes, we do. But that's the whole process of the protest procedure, is to correct those values that we don't get right. Always keep in mind, we don't appraise on a fee appraisal basis. We appraise on a mass appraisal basis, which are different. But we're trying our best to follow state law. January the 1st is our appraisal date. That's the date in which we're shooting for what was the property worth on this date. In order to comply with this law, we have to closely follow the real estate market. The information I'm going to give you is not my data. It's from the Texas A&M Real Estate Center. In January of 2019, we had an average sales price in Tarrant County, and then this is Tarrant County data. In January 2019, we had an average sales price of $267,000, a median price of $220,000. In 2020, that jumped from $267,000 to $316,000 as an average sales price. From 20 to 21, it jumped to $324,000 as an average sales price. In 2022, January of 2022, we jumped from $324,000 to $384,000. As the average sales price in January 2022. In July, the Real Estate Center reported that average sales price was now $459,000, but then in August it went from $459,000 down to $440,000, and in September it's gone now down to $428,000. And what I'm bringing to the board today is I'm not telling you right now that we're going to be raising values across the board by 20% again, as we did last year. But we have seen a trend upward from 267, 316, 324, 384 up to 459. And then now that's starting to fall off. We still I don't have October numbers, I don't have November numbers, and I don't have December numbers. So I'm just preparing the board and trying to prepare the public that the real estate market is still very strong, or it has been very strong. And there's a possibility with the economic conditions that we have right now, with interest rates going up, it has slowed the real estate economy. I'm sure Mr. Crouch can speak to this a lot better than I can. He's a realtor. He could probably speak to that. Now, I want to throw out another element that he'll be quite familiar with. It's months inventory. We've been told that when we have months inventory of five or six, we have a really good real estate market, and real estate will grow at 1 to 2 to 3% per year. In January of 2019, months inventory were 2.1, which basically tells us that we have too much demand and not enough supply. That month's inventory from January of 19 went from 2.1. In 2020, it was 1.9. In 2021, it went to 0.9, less than 1. In January of 2022, it was 0.6. And then in July of 2022, it became 1.9, and it's gone 1.9, 2.1. So just watch with me. 2.1, 1.9, 0.9, 0.6, 1.9, 1.9, 2.1. So we've seen a dip like this where the inventory in Tarrant County homes dropped, therefore, because of so much demand and not enough supply. Now, and I'm not a predictor. I have people calling me all the time saying, what are values going to do? And I tell them I have a cloudy crystal ball. I don't know. I can't predict what the future is going to be. But we're going to watch this market closely, and we're going to watch the data as it comes in, and we're going to see what's going to happen. But as of right now, our average appraised value is less than what the sales prices are, which would indicate to us that we're going to have to raise values for 2023. But we're going to continue watching the market. We're going to continue watching the data and see what happens with the Federal Reserve Bank raising interest rates. We know that there's less sales activity going on. We know that certain people aren't qualifying for loans, so on and so forth. And that may slow the economy enough to where our October, November, and December numbers may change everything. But I'll be bringing this back to you in the December meeting and the January meeting and probably the February meeting to let you know kind of where we are and what we think we're going to see going forward with our real estate values in 2023.
Just quick clarification. But if you have a homestead exception, or your homestead could only go up by 10% a year max, right?
That's correct. I encourage every media outlet here to encourage folks to apply for your homestead exemption. We actually had a wonderful meeting at the city of Fort Worth the other day with an individual who is concerned about people not getting their homestead exemptions, and we're working on efforts to try to go out into the community and proclaim you need to apply for your homestead exemption, because you're exactly right. There's something called a 10% appraisal cap. Mr. Crouch actually has commented about the fact that word appraised value is confusing, because it should be a 10% limited appraisal or something. But yes, if you have a homestead exemption and your value goes up 20%, theoretically you should see a limitation of how much your taxable value will rise based upon that 10% appraisal cap. So I do encourage, and we mail thousands and thousands of homestead applications every single year to encourage people to apply for that homestead exemption, because it is helpful. There is some talk that the legislature may work on changing that this year from 10% down to something lower, 7, 8, 5. I mean, there's been attempts to try to get it as low as 2, but those attempts have failed year after year, session after session, I should say. I'd also like to talk to you about Appraisal Review Board off-site hearings. For the past 2 years, Tarrant Appraisal District has used off-site locations to help us with our Appraisal Review Board hearings. We've leased a couple of, we've borrowed in some cases, we've paid just minimal expenses of little small places to where we can have off-site ARB hearings. This has been very helpful to us, especially for tax agents, because we could send a tax agent off to an off-site location, and they could sit there and spend all day long going through their list of accounts. It's been very helpful. The two sites that we've had before, we've lost them both. And having off-site space allows us to provide more hearing space, and enables us to get protests completed on a timely and efficient manner. Right now, we have the opportunity to partner with one of our local school districts to actually secure a rather large space that would help us for ARB. Having this particular space would allow the ARB to accomplish several things, and one of it is more overall space for hearings. It's actually a very large empty space. It was an old call center, so you can imagine it's a wide open type room like this, so we could set up partitions such as you see over here on the right. We'd actually be able to increase and have more individual hearing rooms to where we could conduct more hearings at one time. Better separation of responsibilities between TAD staff and TAD ARB members. Separation of break areas for the ARB and the TAD members. For years, there's been a perception in Texas, all throughout the Texas appraisal districts, that the ARB does not have proper separation. There's people that complain all the time that the ARB should not be meeting in the TAD building. I've always been a proponent of that. Move them out, but it's always been a cost issue. It's expensive to do. Based upon that fact, if the ARB meets in the same building or the same space, there's an inherent perception problem. Consideration of moving the ARB to a separate off-site location could free up this issue of perception. It could also free up the issue of space for the appraisal district. Obviously, if we moved our entire operation of ARB off of this site, this room would never have to be converted into ARB hearing rooms. We would have more space down on the other end of the building for either informals, or we'd have a whole lot of options of what to do. So with the board's support, it would be one of my goals to provide a better optics for the public and more transparency if we were able to possibly move the appraisal review board this next year in 2023 off-site in a larger space, more accommodating space. I don't have the numbers yet. I don't have the cost. I don't have anything like that to bring back to the board, but it's very possible that in January or February, I may be bringing an item of discussion for the board to say, we would like for you to consider this, and we'd like for you to consider allowing us to transition in a different way. Now, this space that we're currently looking at, it cannot be ours long term. The school district does have long-term plans for this space, but it may be a site that we could use for a year or two, maybe 3 years, something like that. So I just want to throw that out there. You'll probably be seeing that come back. Question?
No.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Oh, are you transitioning from that idea?
Yes, I'm moving to the next one.
Okay, well, I'll wait. I'll make my comments later, but I have a comment on that one I'd like to make.
Okay, we want to do it now or later?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
I was just, it just came into my head. If we're going to start maybe doing something off-site, is there any possibilities we could possibly have them in different portions of the county?
Oh, certainly.
That would make it easier access for the people to get there?
Certainly we could.
It's just an idea. I'm not saying we're going to do it, but would y'all think of it?
Logistics would have to be studied on that.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I know we.
I appreciate the, reaching out, and I will speak to making it easier for people to go to an site near their home or whatever. This location is fairly well centered, and I wonder if we don't move administration to somewhere else. And maybe this remains whatever. But the logistics of having different offices, which multiplies by however many offices people come to, effort to try to run that location. And I don't know about that. That would be my only question.
I don't either. I just know some other things that I'm involved in that we have locations that are, easier for the public to get to.
Well,
that's okay. We can make that a discussion item if we want to, or we'll talk about it off.
But now that you bring that up, we've actually pondered the idea of looking for a new facility, new building. We're at capacity. Yeah, some other place. And I think that the idea of having multiple. We actually used to have one over in Arlington at the Burns Center.
Yes.
We used to use that space, and we would bring people over there. And it's a great idea. It's just going to cost money, is the thing. And actually, TAD, back in the early 80s, we actually did have a centralized location, and we actually had 4 satellite offices, similar to kind of what the county has as far as Wendy's tax offices and the commissioners and things like that.
Courts.
But that was done away with, and they were all brought into one central location. But yeah, we would love to entertain the idea of possibly having TAD either find a new building that has more expanded capacity, or turn around and move the ARB to a different. We've thought about this vacant lot across the street. We've actually studied it. I mean, we're not engineers, but we kind of studied it as far as if we put a building on there and put parking on there, it's just too small. And there's a big drainage ditch behind it that would have to be something big. We've also talked about this one across the street over here with a building burned down. But again, I think we might have a parking issue. But you definitely will hear me talking about this more, because I would like to entertain the idea of this school, get some actual numbers, and bring it back to the board and say, what say you?
Okay. Yeah, I think it's a discussion that, now that we've talked about, and this lady really wants to talk. I don't know who you are, but could you give us your name?
Melissa Lowry-Gallagher. I'm definitely in support of this concept and idea. I had a quick question for clarification. If the public wants to comment on ideas.
Yeah, could you come to the mic, please? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we are Facebook Live now.
Okay.
Melissa Lowry-Gallagher. I'm in support of this idea, absolutely, not necessarily because of optics, but for reality of separation. If the public wants to send you ideas on this, where can we send that? And I don't know if you wanted your tag email, because that'd be a lot. If you have a public comment or form.
Yeah,
On our website, we have the webmaster. You go to.
Why don't you just give them the communications?
All of those to Don?
No,
we don't need to say which names, but we do have a.
Give them your communications email address.
Yeah, we have on our website, we have the webmaster. You can do a public comment. It will be routed to. Oh, there you go. Thank you, Chad. We do have all public comments will go through our website. They'll go through the webmaster, pick the necessary one. It will then be routed by our staff to go to communications. If it needs to go specifically to another department, because it also mentions value or something, it'll go there. But I think just keeping it the way it's been available through our website, and then it'll go to communications.
So webmaster@tad.org is the subject matter.
No, ma'am. So just visit www.tad.org. You can have a contact us form that's been available, and then you'll be able to select a reason why. Just check that. You'll need to put your information in there, and then there is a comment section where you can type in what your comments are. You'll hit submit. It will say sent, and then you'll be able to, the webmaster and everybody at staff will be able to get it to the right person.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I got one more topic and then I'll wrap up. With regards to our website is not down. It's kind of being temporarily move to a different place for search and capabilities such as that. We're working on enhancements to our website, and quite frankly, this is just the best time of the year for us to do that. We obviously can't do it at the beginning of the year, we can't do it in the middle of the year, and after the certification is done, that's the time in which we would need to do this. Basically, TAD's website has been a site to where we just serve up information. We put reports out there, we serve up different things, and as the legislature has been acting over many, many sessions, they started expanding our role and what we should do, and we've had search capabilities, and then they came back and said, and we've generally just had static data sitting out there. Well, now the legislature has come along and said, well, we need online protest. So we did that. We put that out there. And we need online settlements now to where people can have a negotiation process through that. We need the capabilities to upload evidence, things of that nature. We need the ability to upload photos. And now we've even gotten to the point where sort of the public is demanding online applications, which I'm all in favor of. Don't misunderstand me. The website is great about that. But the problem kind of is that our website's transitioning from just a static public data site to more of an e-commerce site, to where we're having interactions, we're sending information out and we're receiving information in. And so security and logistics and enhancements are always a big issue and a concern, and something we want to make sure we do right. So we are making enhancements to our sites to make sure that we're doing everything correctly. We also have right now our website's like on 12 servers. And we want to condense that down and rework it to where we can maybe get the website on just a couple of servers. Another thing that we're doing, and you've kind of approved it through the action item today, is we want to set the Tarrant Appraisal Review Board, we want to have its own site. Again, when we talk about perception and separation, you come to the Tarrant Appraisal District website and you go to the ARB Part 2 there. So we're working to try to separate the review board from the appraisal district and having its own platform, and one of the action items you did today was part and parcel of that. So we're making some enhancements. Yes, we are we appear to be down, but we're really not down. We went back and we tried to say we want to keep the search capabilities. I know there's some agent capabilities because you can't log on right now, but it's my understanding that's supposed to be back up today. I looked this morning and it it looks like it's still the same, taking you to the Tarrant Tax Info website. But that has, for the general public, that has most everything that we had on our old website, our old search capabilities. But IS continues to assess our internal and external security vulnerabilities, and we discover those vulnerabilities and we address them swiftly. So this period of time in which we are transitioning is to address a whole host of different issues and try to rework our website to where we're setting up more like an e-commerce type system rather than just here's a bunch of static information and static PDFs and things of that nature. So I know it appears to be down, but the functionality has just changed right now, and we plan on having it all. And by the way, we have not been hacked. I've gotten some comments saying, have you been hacked? And it's my understanding that DCAD, Dallas Appraisal District, was hacked a couple of days ago. I literally found that out this morning. But we have not been hacked. We purposely made this change to make some enhancements. I'm sorry, ma'am. You'll need to come up here because we're live streaming now.
In terms of the search capabilities, some of the search functions are not available anymore. Are those going to return?
Yeah, we're trying to get those come back just ASAP. And
the amount of information that's available is a lot more limited, and I was just curious if that's going to be.
No, we're trying to enhance all of that. That's part of it. And actually create more search. Yeah.
Can you give your name?
My name's Jess Harden. I'm with the Star Telegram.
Yeah.
I use the website all the time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I guess I knew who she was.
Yeah, and we're not trying to take away functionality. We're really trying to enhance functionality, but at the same time make sure that it is secure. That's all I have, Ms. Wallman.
I do have a question, and it's under the category of real estate trends, and it may be a Wendy Davis tax assessor question, but is there going back to my council days. Nightmare.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. Is there a report that's available, readily available, that would, let me back up and say, there is a distinction between what you do under state law and appraisals, between the taxing entities establishing their tax rates. Is there a trend line that shows what happens in Tarrant County as far as appraised values and market values as opposed to what the taxing entities are doing as far as tax rates?
Mm-hmm.
And the nature of the question is based on, obviously, we're getting ready to go to a legislative session soon, and we're all going to be subject to testifying, and I'd like to have that ammunition available.
I don't know of a particular site that you can go to right now that will show that. For the past 3 years, we've been sending out postcards to taxpayers all across Tarrant County, 750,000 plus every year. And that directs you to a website that the legislature created at a House Bill, Senate Bill 2. And that one will actually give you kind of some graphs with regards to what tax rates have been doing and what's happening with your actual taxes kind of year over year. But I don't know of a particular one that overlays what the appraised value has done and what the tax rate is. But it wouldn't be too hard to create one, because I mean all of my tax rate value information's online.
Okay.
And this Tarrant Tax Info site, it's online, so a person could actually create that chart relatively easy.
Okay. Well, as,
The data.
I think we should have that kind
Yeah.
of information available.
Okay. The data that I got here was taken straight from the Texas A&M Real Estate Center. If you go to them and you click on data, you go down and you can put in Tarrant County, and it will show you housing activity and give you, information all the way back to 2007, 2008, somewhere like that. I can't remember exactly the date, but it goes way back.
Good, thank you.
I like your question. I think that's good. I'd like to know that too. That's good.
Do we have a time we expect the website to be functioning again?
I was under the impression that it was going to be today.
Oh.
Yeah. I think our IS director, Cal, is he out sick again today?
Yeah, he was still out sick.
Yeah, he was sick yesterday, and so he's been out sick yesterday and today.
They were still doing, they wanted to do some final testing on the search capabilities.
Okay.
They were Monday morning.
Okay. Yeah, we're working to get it back up ASAP. Trust me, I know, Ms. Harden, that you're not the only one who uses our website. It's I've gotten letters from attorneys and phone calls from people. But we're working hard. But it's
Okay. Any other comments or?
Going to go to the next agenda item?
Yep, we're going to it.
I've got 4 things I'd like to put on the agenda.
Okay.
Well, it doesn't mean it's gonna get on there.
I know.
Okay.
I know. I'd asked that they be put on this agenda because I felt like
I know.
this board was in a position to actually start taking action on things and nothing. And I'm laughing a little bit because at the last meeting, Jungus ended our discussion with a speech about how hard we're going to be working and we're going to be doing all these things, and then we adjourned for 3 months with no action, and then on this agenda we had no action. I feel like that was an irresponsible thing for us to do. So,
okay, go ahead.
I'd like to discuss releasing the full report that we got. We released the summary report. I made that motion last time to release that, but we'd only had that full report for a day and a half, and it took time to think about it, and it had a dramatic effect on me.
I know.
So I'd like to discuss releasing that to the public, which I don't see any reason why not. Everything, in my opinion, is fine. I've gone through and highlighted a copy of it and redacted or highlighted all the things I thought would have to be redacted if there was any concern, and it's not very much. So, and I think we've already covered a lot of it. And I'd like to also refer that to the district attorney's office to see if there was official oppression that occurred. I don't know. Now, I'm also aware I may be able to release that report on my own, but I'm not willing to do that. The reason I asked the chair for this to be on the agenda this time is so we could discuss it in open session. And instead, I've just decided to ask.
Are you talking about the Todd report again? Or the
full report?
The full
Not
report,
summary,
yeah.
The full report.
I think that was an executive session, as I recall.
It was.
And that's.
And my understanding from our attorney is that its existence is not privileged. And so I am declaring that we've got a report that is being withheld, at least at this point, and I'm asking the board, rather than just me, myself.
Yeah.
I'd like to have a full discussion about it.
Okay.
The two are tied together, but I think we need to revisit our chief appraiser's role in that. I think that needs to be discussed and acted on. We also had the AOA issue, and this is what I thought we were going to be able to discuss today, but we decided to punt on it as well. This issue is a whole lot bigger than what we had, and I'm aware that Mr. Crouch has put on his website a video that describes some of the people that gave testimony, and I think that's revealing, and I think we ought to talk about that. And then Mr. Lonburnham brought up an issue of how he was treated, and he alluded to maybe it was the company that he was keeping. And I'm trying to piece that all together in my mind, but nobody should walk in the door of TAD and be treated like that. And I don't think it was just a faulty impression on his part. That's why I was making that point. There's sort of an inference. I'm sorry you felt that way kind of implies that it didn't really happen, or you just took it wrong. And Mr. Burnham has been involved in this community for, I think he's 50 years, long time. And I just met him today for the first time.
I know who he is.
Yeah, and so I feel like that's a pretty good barometer of what happened. I doubt he had, and I've got, the reason he talked about it is I've got other examples. So I feel like if we're going to be transparent, we need to release that report. I would have rather discussed this in an executive session first, and we make a team effort out of it. But I'm not willing to wait around. We've already been working on this for 5 months, or not longer than that, since May.
Since last November.
Yeah, that's when it all started, and we didn't get aware of it until May. And so I think rather than just not talking about these things, we need to deal with them. And I'm trying to work through the process, and I'm trying to make sure I respect everybody in the process. But I'm not interested in just punting down the road and kicking the can at this point. So that's why I'm bringing it up now at this point in the meeting, and I hope we can get it on the agenda.
Well, we'll certainly look at it and see if it works out that way, and you know how it gets on the agenda. There are 2 or more that can put it on. However,
that's right. Let me address that.
Excuse me, let me finish.
Go ahead.
Do you mind? Okay.
Yeah.
The issue with Mr. Burnham, is I wasn't there, and I think that we need to talk with maybe I would like to talk. Oh, is he still here?
No, this lady had her hand up on that.
Oh, okay, just a moment. Let me finish my comments, please. I'm not saying that I didn't think it happened. I'm saying that I think I would like to hear both sides of the story and not jump automatically to one side. I felt it was his feeling that it was that way. Was it really intended that way? Was it really that way? And it may have been, but it may not have been also. And so that's the reason that I said, I'm sorry that he felt that way, because I don't really know what was said or how it happened, because I wasn't there. And yes, we can look into it, and I'm glad to do that. But I don't want to automatically say our employee was wrong, because I wasn't there and I didn't hear it. And that was where I was coming from.
Okay.
And so I'm sorry you thought that I was blowing it off, because I wasn't. It was since we were neither one there, let's don't assume the outcome, okay? All right, yes, ma'am. Would you come to the mic, please?
My name is Desiree Thomas, and this is my first time in the building. Last time I came, I was not able to get in because of the line. I was a witness in the lobby. I didn't know any of the players. Unbiased opinion, I had no idea who they were, and I think people's emotions were kind of high today. Your employee, I think his name was Victor, because I heard his name mentioned, he handled himself very professionally. And this is just from an innocent bystander, and I don't want him to get in trouble for anything. He was very polite and very adamant about, he asked me to sit, and then he addressed the 2 gentlemen and asked them to please come this way, because he wasn't doing tours, and to come this way. I didn't feel like he was out of line. I don't want to mispronounce his name, Longford. He got a little heated, but I think maybe his emotions were a little high today. So I think Victor took kind of some brunt of that, and that was just me sitting in the lobby watching all of this go down. So I just want to put that out there. And again, when people's emotions go high, we all get heated. So I think everybody was just kind of there. But I just want to stand up for, there he is, Victor.
That's only Ricardo.
Okay, I'm sorry. He handled himself very professionally. So that's all I wanted to say today.
Were there other people that you saw in the vicinity?
I'm not sure if I could pick them out. I think one gentleman is in the room, but like I said, this is my first time here. And I think he was one of the gentlemen that spoke earlier. Like I said.
I have a quick question for you. Your first time here, did you feel welcome?
Good question.
Well, I just want to know, did you feel like you were welcome here in this building, or were you made to feel?
Coming in?
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't have, I was like, this room, there was no kitchen.
No, you personally, as you came in, I think all our citizens should feel like they can come here and they're welcome, and they have just as much right to be here as anybody else, and I want to know, did you feel that way?
Yes, I was welcome. They asked me where I was here. They had me sit down, receptionist smiled, and then we were walked back here. So
Okay.
I just wanted to put that out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. Okay, are we down, anybody else have any, there you are.
Yeah, and I do want to ask the staff to provide us, and I understand the agent issue is covered by state law, and if you could provide us copies of what it says, because I have looked into it. I too had asked for it to be on the agenda and think that it's worth looking at. I do want to make a distinction in that I'm not talking about reviewing individual complaints. I'm concerned with the policy being confusing, that it's creating a friction among competitors. And it's not our role, I don't think, to separate out competitors and talk about who shot John or who shot who. But it is our role to advise the legislature if there is a problem with the policy affecting how the bill, how the agent role is spelled out. For example, what seems strange to me is I understand if you check an individual block, that automatically every year you're going to get a copy of the tax record.
Yeah.
And that makes sense if you're paying the tax bill. It doesn't make sense if your business is protesting. So I'd like to take a look at it. And
I agree with you. I think we do. So that's the ARA? AOA.
It's appointment of agency.
AOA, yeah.
Authorization of agency or something.
Yeah, okay. I think you just heard it'll be on the agenda. Two of you agreed?
Okay.
And I agree.
We got that one on, Jungus, thank you.
Well,
Now,
I had asked for it to be on there.
yeah, there were some reasons, and we'll talk about that later, but yes, I agree with it, because
I understand.
we did all talk with Mr. Crouch, and I saw the stack, and I called him immediately when I heard about it.
I talked to Mr. Crouch about it as well.
I know, and the minute I heard about it, I said yes, but that's kind of a different, anyway. Okay, is there anything else, anybody?
Yeah, so under our current policy, I want to explain, I thought, talking about these things was no big deal, but I obviously have said some things. I wanted to make sure I was on safe ground, so I checked with our attorney to make sure where things were, and he contacted you and asked these things to be on the agenda, and you refused. Under our new policy, which we apply that within last year.
The last 2 meetings.
There has to be 2 people agree. Well, I've already talked to you about it. You and I talked. I wanted to do this months ago, okay? And we talked about it then. Now, I've ended up calling Tony and talking to him about it. I can't talk to anybody else.
That's right. I talked to Jungus. I can't talk to anybody else.
Yeah, so the fact that open meetings prevents a majority, or in our case, it's 4 people. You can't talk to 4 people, and we're 3 people already.
I know. Well, you're right, yeah.
So how do you get a 4th person if you can't have a discussion about it? And, that's the frustrating part of this. It basically says you get to set the agenda and decide what we talk about as chairman or chairwoman, and I'm not comfortable with that. So I don't know how we get this.
I understand completely, because...
And I don't think there are exceptions about talking about a future agenda in terms of open meetings, are there?
That's one of the main reasons why on the agenda, there's usually an item about future agenda items, because this is...
We can discuss it here. That's where I think, just like we just did it.
Yeah.
You brought it up, Jungus agreed, I agree, and probably Tony, I don't know, I won't answer for Tony. So that, I agree, that is the way it's normally done, is when you bring up an item to the whole, then you find out, then you see, and it usually, I think I've asked, does anybody else want to, discuss this? But yeah, if it happens, like we did have a long break.
3 months.
Yes, that's a long break. Yeah. And so we were not able to talk to more people, yes. Because,
Well, we had things from that meeting that was supposed to be on the agenda at this meeting and agreed to by everybody, and it didn't show up.
well, then that was wrong. If that, we need to go back and look at it.
Either that or y'all just changed your mind.
Well, it's hard to talk about what, I mean, you know,
Yeah, so
anyway,
the majority agreed at an open meeting, and behind the scenes, we changed the rules, and that's not right.
you're right.
Did y'all get that? She just told me I was right.
That's a first.
No, we're friends.
No, I understand. There were some other things I think possibly that came up, Mr. Tepper and I discussed, and
If
I did
there
talk
was-
with Tepper, and I did, so, yeah.
If there was such a decision when we have an open meeting discussing what's on the agenda, I think everybody agrees that shouldn't happen
Right.
without the full board being, or at all. In an open meeting, that's where
Well,
the business is supposed
It
to
will
happen.
be on, it will, I'll tell you what, it will be on the next agenda.
Very good.
Okay. Are there any other agenda items that anyone else wants to comment on at this particular time that Mr. Diaz has presented?
Specifically releasing the full report, talking about the chief appraiser status, and the AOA is already on there.
And going to the
treatment of-
district attorney's office? Is that all part of the Todd report?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so that's one together. Are those combined, or is that in separate?
Well, really, so what I want to discuss is whether we can refer that report to the district attorney.
Oh, okay, so that's not really a,
But this is another one of these cases, probably. I'm reading our policy, and in my mind, it's pretty clear, we're not supposed to do what happened.
yeah.
We don't need any additional language for that, in my opinion, but we have clarifying language, okay.
Okay.
I've got also the law in the penal code about official oppression. I'm reading some of that, and I'm thinking, how could this not be? And I'd like to go over that. I was asking for an executive session. Now everybody knows I think there may have been a criminal violation as a result of that. That's my opinion. But I'm not a lawyer, I'm not the DA, and
No.
I'm not a criminal, or I'm not an attorney or anything. And I was not looking to do this way, but I'm not gonna walk past it either. I think this board has to get the PR that we're looking for. We need to be open and transparent, and that's why I'm asking for it to be on the agenda.
Okay.
Or at least specifically, I don't know, we could probably trust the DA's office to not disclose it further. I don't know how they would view, I don't know how we can do that, but we can talk about it behind closed doors if y'all want to next time, or we can talk about it in the open like we're doing right now.
I think the other one you asked for, the chief appraisal's role, I think that is personnel matter and would be discussed in the executive session. I may be wrong,
Certainly.
but I think that's the procedure for that.
But to put it on the agenda, I have to.
Well,
So
actually,
Probably, I think where they're gonna be happy to discuss, I'm assuming, I'm not in your heads, I don't know what you think. But I would expect that maybe the board would at least have the discussion about the report. And if anything comes out of that, we might do that at a follow-up meeting or something like that.
report on,
The full report.
a full report
Instead of
on,
the summary.
Clark report.
well, I've got that, but then we were talking about the chief appraiser. And
I've got them as two different things. Those are.
I do have some too, but we were talking about that, and then you said, yes, okay. I'm just trying to be clear, because it didn't sound clear to me. But anyway, the other, I had one more thing, now I've lost that train. Okay, I don't think, I know what I was gonna tell you, is the next report, the chief appraiser, we will be evaluating him in December, as I recall. Is that right?
That's typically what we always do, is put the evaluation chief
So I
appraiser
think we
on the
can do
agenda
that,
in December.
and that will be an executive session. Okay?
Sure.
All right, so that's done. And the AOA's done. And then discussion about releasing the full report. Do we need to say that we want to discuss that or put that as an action item? Does
I think
anybody?
the question is, what is subject to open records
Yes.
under the law. And I think the attorney can brief on that.
Okay.
I think, as we have discussed previously, that is covered by attorney-client privilege and attorney-client communication. So I think if somebody was to make a request for it, that we would probably challenge that. And
Okay.
my opinion is that we would be successful with that. But.
Yep. So we can keep it from the public, probably. And I agree with that. I'm going to write a letter in support of releasing it to the Attorney General's office and explain my point of view and see if they can carve it out. And I'm even going to send them my redacted copy because there's a lot in there. There's a lot in there. I don't want to talk about anything specific, but I think we're going to choose, are we going to be transparent or are we not going to be transparent?
I think under the law, we're going to be very transparent.
Yeah. I think we ought to just release the whole thing.
Well,
And I don't know why there would, but let's let the process work.
yeah, we have different opinions, and we agree to disagree,
Yep,
and we're still friends.
we will be.
Yeah. Oh, aren't we now?
Yes.
Oh, we will be.
See, little words matter, don't they?
Oh, listen. Oh, never mind. I had another experience with that. All right, are we ready to set the date for the December meeting?
It's already said, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it's
For
what?
the schedule.
9, yeah,
Ninth,
okay.
Yeah.
I didn't remember. It was the 9th. Okay. Any other comments? Anybody want to say anything? Dungus, you did you? You are clear? You all clear? Okay. All right, then this meeting. Oh, yeah. Happy and honor to all veterans in this, that we know and in this room. Thank you for being here today, and we are now adjourned. I know. Don't turn that mic off. I have another thing I'm going to talk about.
Give this to you. I wasn't blowing smoke. I'll give you one too.
Oh, thanks. What is it?
It's about employees and outside jobs.
doing here. Thank you so much. I'm appalled. Would agree with you just to talk about.
I know she's a realtor, and I have talked to her. She does not
But
practice.
apparently they have to agree to put it on the agenda.
You want me to give you all the active
Sometimes it takes
Well, it's my understanding, her husband, I don't know, I'll look into it.
It's very iffy.
But I have talked to her about it.
I serve an elected position in South County.
Better look at it.
On the Denver Water.
I'm trying to be upfront with you.
For the first 2 years of my 4 years,
You know, I got to reach
I was
out.
gone. And so it's always.
Don't say I brought something.